Hello, hi everyone.
Hi.
What is this? My name is Mina V. Esguerra, and I'm a romance author and publisher. Uh, and I started 10 years ago. This is actually my 10th year.
Wow.
It's actually my first published book was released 11 years ago. This is my 10th year as a self-publisher and publisher. So yeah, I can talk about a bunch of things regarding like the way I write, the way I publish, and experiments that I've done in the past 10 years. First started writing because I love to read romance. So that was that's how it is when I was thinking of uh, writing a book and having it published. I kind of went back to like what would be the thing that I would be writing a book about, and I kept coming back to the kinds of books that I loved reading as a teenager. So that's romance, and even so the prompt for actually wanting to be published was one of those things that I want yung like bucket list things.
Mm.
Have a book published before I turn 30, something like that. So that was the prompt, and then I worked on it. I finished the manuscript, and then at the time, the way to get it published was to query publishers. So I did that. I wrote a manuscript, I wrote a query letter, I emailed local publishers, and waited for response.
Yeah.
So that was how it was back then, and of course, a lot has changed since then. But my first book was released 11 years ago, and that's what started the whole me as romance author uh, career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when for example, I used to hear that, or not used to, I hear that now in the US, when people want to get published, what they do is they need to have a literary agent, so there's so many
Yeah.
channels you have to go through. What's it like here when you had like, oh, even back then or even now, what was it like to, if you want to pitch to a publisher, if you want to get your story out there, what's the process like?
Back then, and it's still similar when you're trying to pitch a U.S. publisher because the system was it kind of remains similar. You actually write a book first
Of course.
and sort of get it in shape that somebody else could read it, and then you write a letter to a publisher. The difference with the US system of having a literary agent is the reason why you have an agent is so they can advocate for you in terms of negotiations of book in your book deal, in your contract, how many books, the advance that you get, percentage of royalties in local publishing, because there's probably not going to be a negotiation. There's they've decided if they actually acquire your book if a Philippine publisher decides to acquire your book, you probably don't get a lot of leeway in terms of negotiation. And because agents earn a percentage of
Mm,
the contract that they negotiate, it's not worth. Agents
yeah.
don't really work here because since there's no negotiation, they don't any percentage that they're gonna get won't be significant. So that's why it's always authors advocating for themselves when it comes to publishers here in the Philippines. But the way that you learn how to do that, the way that you write a manuscript, and the way that you present it in a letter that someone else will read and someone else will probably judge. It's good practice, even if you're not uh, working with a US publisher eventually, or even if you don't query a Philippine publisher eventually. Just going through that professional practice of putting your thoughts down, summarizing what your book is about in a way that factors in the market, um, publisher perspective, why people would want to buy this, and why you wrote it. It's good practice anyway. So when you see advice online about how to approach a publisher, even if you don't intend to, I would recommend just going through the process also.
When you were pitching your book, for example, you said that you wanted to write a certain kind of book, like the kind of books you enjoyed when you were younger, doing romance.
Mhm.
Um, for example, the fact that you wanted to write in a specific genre, was that a factor in, for example, choosing which publishers you were pitching to? Is there a difference in for example, if because for example, if you want there's some people, I guess, who just want to be published, and they try to choose, okay, what genre is popular now. But what you did was more
Mm-hmm.
of, I want this is a specific book that I wanted to do. So is the approach different? Was the approach different there? Like, did you have to suss out on
Yeah.
which?
Yes. But that was a choice that I made, and I didn't really think at the time. I know that people think that. I know that people think I just want to be published and I want to be popular. So I will look at the trends and then attack those trends. So a lot of people do that, and a lot of people can be successful doing that. But uh, I went into this more of like as a project for myself. So I didn't see it as just looking at something that was popular but that I didn't connect to at all. So I said if I'm going to spend time, it still took me writing the manuscript and going through the process of talking to people about your book. It really takes a lot out of you, especially if you're like introvert artist
Yeah, as
or
most of us are.
yeah, it's yeah, as a lot of as I learned, a lot of authors are like it's really hard to talk about your work. So when you have to do that, you kind of have to believe in it, right? It's always, it shouldn't be difficult to tell somebody that this is something that you are proud of, and this is why a lot of people deserve to read it. So what I did, but I didn't even think of it that way. For me, it was just really what would be fun for me, what would I enjoy, and what do I know. So I know romance, I know YA. I read a lot of Sweet Valley High and Sweet
Yeah,
Dreams
actually,
growing
same.
up.
Me too.
Yeah, same. And then so I knew that there was a gap in terms of Filipino authored books like that. There weren't enough because Sweet Dreams had a new book every month
Mhm.
for more than a decade. So
Yeah,
that really develops into a catalog where you have all
right,
these experiences, all these stories, and we didn't have that. So I thought I'd start with that because I like reading that. I knew which publishers were kind of, if not interested in doing that or already doing that, they understood the aesthetic and
mhm,
they already were in touch with that market. So so that had to be but actually when something is popular, any publisher will is going to try it. But what happens there is they might not have within their team the expertise
right,
to edit it well, to design it well, to market it well, and
mhm,
distribute it well, which is their entire job.
right,
so so it but I only found this out later because at the time I really wasn't experienced in that aspect of publishing. I worked in corporate communications and web publishing for for a different industry entirely. I didn't know trade publishing or fiction publishing very well here, so I just really went with whose books and magazines did I buy already,
mhm,
whose design aesthetic
right.
I like, and when I wanted books that were similar to mine, who was already publishing stuff like that. So yeah, that that's how I went about it. And of course, years later, I realized that is the way to go about it.
Yeah.
You have to go with people who know the market already, especially if you're new.
Oh, it's nice. You mentioned that actually you were working in a different field at the time. You know, because a lot of my students, for example, they're thinking that, especially those who are applying to be writers, are wondering, can this be my full-time thing? I used to tell them that I told them during class that it doesn't have to be your full-time thing right away. You can do it sort of at the side first. You can do a different job with using your skill set. Like in your jobs, or were there things in your job at the time that you could easily like would translate into helping you finish your book and writing your book, and how did you find the time to write, and while having another full-time job also?
So I I guess the broader answer to that is I've always been interested in writing. So anything that I did from high school to college to after that, was it was writing, had a writing theme in some way. So I graduated from ABCom Ateneo.
Mm-hmm.
I did not write a thing of fiction. Was not a member of any
Not not
fiction.
heights or ganyan, oh.
Uh, no, did not do theater. None of that. Did not do film. No, I did not do any of that. But I was always writing. So I was always writing, and then found it easy to transition into an editor job after
Mm-hmm.
college. Eventually took my master's in development communication. So that was more of um, social marketing, or communicating messages that had to do with community and social impact. So all these things are communication related, and as this was in 2000 something, so the web was becoming more and more prominent, and if you were an editor, you were probably assigned to do the website of anything,
Yeah.
and social media was coming up. So really, if you're marketing, or if you're writing oriented or editorial oriented, you will end up doing digital or web publishing in some way at work. So that gave me the confidence to sort of tune out, uh, to be able to create something, because the writing side of me was doing uh, like mechanical editorial things,
Yeah.
and so I was able to find time, but you had to find time. Like I did not just have it. I had to make time. I had to give myself a deadline. So that was when, like, publish by this age.
Mm-hmm.
That's where that came in. I had to force myself to really reorient myself and think creatively again. I think a lot of students go through this, especially in com. Like you come in wanting to write this film, this great
Right.
film, or write great book, and then you have to study all the theory, and then you lose you lose whatever it is that originally inspired you, or you get sort of talked out of it because
Mm-hmm.
now you've seen much better work. and so that kind of that slowed me down in terms of creating new things after college. But at a certain age, I decided, I have to do this for myself. Um, and then I had about 10 years of like work experience in other aspects of editorial and publishing, so it helped. All of it helped. So I guess if anybody ends up graduating and then ending up in a job that isn't necessarily creating, it's okay. Everything helps. And I wouldn't recommend doing this full time right away.
Right.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Even now, I kind of, after 10 years of writing and publishing, I've transitioned my LinkedIn and my career profile into more of a publishing oriented profile. But I
Yeah.
still do my main work. I just don't go around speaking in classes about it. It's
Yeah.
not interesting. So, but yeah, you can still be you can do a lot in terms of creating and publishing and still have another job.
Yeah.
I don't know if that will be interesting or encouraging or discouraging, but yeah, that will happen, and it's okay. But at the same on the other side of it, I know I have friends who are authors who really did decide to do this full time, and it is a job, and they're very successful. But imagine writing novels 8 hours a day and
Wow.
releasing several new novels or novellas a month. It is a job. So it is a small business of sorts. So it is possible if that's the kind of job that you want.
Yeah. Because one of the issues that my students bring up a lot is, oh, I don't know if I want to, even though the class is about being a creative professional, where you're supposed to take your course, your art, and make into a living or a profession. A lot of them are worried about the fact that, oh, I don't know if I want my writing to be my job, because does that mean now, there'll be someone telling me what I can write, what I cannot write, or because the market demands this and all that. Um, and so I could sense with a lot of my students that there's that fear of losing sort of control over the thing that you create, that it's not anymore and we tell them that, being professional, that's part of the compromise, that you get to make a living out of it, but you sometimes have to you're doing this for other people because that's what people are willing to pay for. um, but I tell some of the students that, that's why, for example, if you want to have more control over what you write, so you also, the cost there is, you have to handle more of it, more of the, not just the writing side, but more of the business side. So I just to segue into the next topic, I guess, is why did you decide to enter into self-publishing? I think, if correct me if I'm wrong, because you wanted to write a very specific kind of story, like you wanted to do romance, Filipino
Mhm.
romance, romance in English. So and as you said, you were looking, you were not, what's popular, I'll write that so I can make my living, but I just want to create a very specific kind of book. I want to create specific kind of stories. Is that why you felt the need that I have to, start to take control of the whole, more of the process than just the writing side?
Uh, so my first self-published book was released 10 years ago. So
Mhm.
the reason why I self-published that time was only because uh, I had a publisher. They published my first book, but they also had a publishing schedule.
Mhm.
So at the time, they were not releasing more than, I think, 4 books a year
Mhm.
of the kind of book that I was writing, which was chick lit contemporary romance. So after my first book came out and there was a really nice response to it, I thought that it would be one book and then done, and then I would move on with my life. But I actually got a nice response to it. So I started writing again. I had another idea. I started writing. Finished, I guess, relatively quickly. And then I knew, even before like telling them, I knew that even if they liked it, they wouldn't be able to take it on and release it as soon as I wanted, because there was a line. They weren't publishing as many books back then. So I looked at my options. Like, I didn't want to wait 3 years or 2 or 3 years before another book of mine came out. And at the time, Amazon was accepting uh, international authors publishing on their ebook platform. I don't. They were accepting. So yeah, so that was a new thing, and I experimented doing that because
This
my
is
book
with
was in
the,
English.
yeah, this is Kindle, right? The Kindle
Yes.
ebook store.
So
Yeah.
the Kindle platform used to be, apparently, I didn't even know it at the time, but apparently at the beginning it was just US authors that they were publishing. And then eventually uh that year, I don't know if it was that year or just before I had discovered it, they had started accepting books from international authors. So I thought there was nothing to lose. I write in English anyway. Let me just put it out there as an experiment and see what happens. And it started from there. So whatever market that I had developed was almost like uh, I just had to learn on the job almost. So yes, you do get to control a lot of the aspects of publishing. A lot of authors don't want to do that. They want to work with a publisher because they don't want to think about, they just want to write. They don't want to think about design, cover design, formatting, marketing. They want someone else to do it for them. Uh, the the sad realization is you're probably going to do that anyway in the year 2020. Because back then the traditional wisdom was, if you only wanted to write and you had written an excellent book, go with a publisher because they'll do all of the other work for you. In the years that passed, we started to see that authors who had, for example, an online following, meaning this is marketing, like when you're on Twitter or on Instagram or on Facebook and you have people following you there, or you're on Wattpad and people are following you there, that is considered marketing. So now that's one thing that a publisher won't do for you because you're supposed to do it for yourself. And then eventually it was all these things. And for example, and it happened several times with friends of mine who had worked with traditional publishers. Like, they were used to a certain look for their book, a certain art style, or a certain look for their cover, and then the publisher gives them something else, and they end up like exercising their veto
Yeah.
over the look, and then referring their own designer friends, referring if the way that you want to be involved in your book, uh even if now you have a traditional publisher, it's required now that you be very involved. So after a while, maybe a lot of my author friends would experience this in varying degrees of success,
Mm.
and in varying degrees of success. Wait, just 1 second. Yeah, don't, don't move your yeah, so this is my primary job, is being mother to this cat.
Yes. I thought to lock my door so the kids don't really come in while they're luckily they're all homeschooling downstairs.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so what happens is, if you if you're used to doing things a certain way, and knowing that your book should look a certain way, or it will be liked by your readers if it were a certain way, you end up transmitting a lot of that to your TradPub team as well. So you will end up thinking, what if I were just doing this myself, or what if I just self-publish?
Yeah.
And 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 because a lot of this industry, at least locally, has a lot of like freelancers working with Tradpub and with indie. You could end up working with the exact same people anyway, and release the book how you want it. Um, some things remain difficult, like bookstore placement. Um,
Mhm.
if you're indie, uh,
Yeah.
so but that's why I focus a lot on digital. And because so far digital is just everywhere. And I write in English. Again, that's the thing. The language that I write in does have a lot of readers in countries, not just the Philippines, and actually in cities, not just Manila. So
Mm.
it it just happens to be that I have a product that's easy to digitize and easy to sell in other places.
You know, I think a lot of people they get confused by the term publishing. I think
Mm-hmm.
I think I've seen you talk about it before online also, and I get this a lot because our family has a printing press where writers will come up to us and say, so since you have a printing press, can you publish my book? You know, and we're like, no,
Oh,
we just print the book. That's not, publishing is different from printing.
yeah.
So and because you're just saying that whether you go traditional publishing or self-published, a lot of the tasks are still the same. So some people may be asking, so what is publishing then? When are you considered the publisher of the book? So what does what just to make it clear, like what for you, what is publishing? What makes you the publisher of your book? When you do what, or when you
Um, okay. I have a view wherein if I consider myself a publisher if I control the creative aspect, and as well as the distribution and editorial aspect of the book. So even if I work with a traditional publisher in printing and distribution, which I do have partnerships that cover just printing and distribution, I make it clear that I'm the publisher and
mm-hmm.
they are a partner.
I see.
Some, this is something that, yeah, we have to talk about in terms of like different authors see it different ways. For example, when I talk to Wattpad authors, I tell them that you are the publisher of your book. When you hit publish on Wattpad, you have published your book. It uh, Even if they consider it a work in progress because it's serial, or eventually when it's sold, it's edited or changed in some way. The fact that they have made it public on a website to a readership of thousands and maybe millions, they should consider themselves the publisher from that point on. So it's a debate, and a lot of people like sort of need to get used to it because suddenly I guess it feels like when you call yourself a publisher, now you have all this responsibility and
Mm-hmm.
uh, all this work that you have to do. but I like talking authors through that, because when they consider themselves part of the professional process now early, then maybe they'll make more interesting or safer choices or better choices for themselves, rather than thinking that they're an amateur, and then only when they sign with a corporate entity do they become professional. Yeah, we are building our brands online as we create and post, so we should be more in charge of these things that we release. Yeah.
Yeah. On my end, like when I talk to people and they ask me about publishing, one of the factors I always bring in is about money. Basically, I say that, for me, the like my view is the publisher is the one who puts up a lot of the money
Yeah.
for getting the book out there. So, for example, like with when I publish comics, for example, for one of my friends, like Arnold Are, when he tried self-publishing his book, I don't give him because he's the one who paid for the printing, he paid for all the
Mm-hmm.
marketing and all that. But when I was the one he asked me to publish his book. So I said, okay, so we become the publisher because basically we're the ones who will put up the money for printing,
Yeah.
for the marketing and all that. Um, and that of course affects also the profit sharing basically afterwards. Like when you self-publish, the idea is that you get to keep bulk of the income. While if you have someone else publish for you, I'm not sure how it is with other publishing companies, but usually they give you a certain royalty, right?
Yeah.
Which they, as you
Mm-hmm.
said, they're the ones who said that.
Yeah.
How does
They
that?
said.
Yeah. So how does that happen? Like for example, not since a lot of the stuff that you do is mostly digital. How does have you ever worked with a publisher in digital, or does digital really mean that you have to go self publishing? Because what's the role of a publisher going to be in digital? If
I
there's no
have only
costs. Hard.
Yeah. I have only worked with a Oh, actually, I have worked with the digital publisher, but it was a specific project. So when I told you about Filipino authors being really successful doing this and doing it full time, yes, there are Filipino authors who are also like who have set up like boutique digital
Mm,
publishers. So I have worked with one in particular, and uh so I guess the way that we define our relationship is if they get to decide when my book is released. so so what I did was I wrote a book based on it was like an anthology that would be a limited run. It felt very like a team coming together. It wasn't really a publisher relationship the way that many see it. But what happens is this Filipino author had a boutique digital publishing firm. We came up with an anthology idea together. It was going to be a limited run, I think only 3 months on Amazon. So everyone wrote their book based on certain requirements, submitted, it was packaged, it was sold, and then at the end of 3 months, we got our money, and then the rights reverted back to every author. Uh, so so in that case, yes, that firm was my publisher, because they controlled the cover when it
mm.
was released. They collected the money. They distributed the royalties. They got to decide where it was sold. So I consider that a publisher relationship. Every other time that I've published a book, I actually keep digital rights. So I have only really given print distribution to Philippine publishers. So so it's a partnership wherein I consider myself still the digital publisher of all of my books. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to keep in mind when that it's also rights. It's really a matter of when you get a publisher, that you're just assigning them rights um, to, to release something. Like my experience is that when it's digital, they very rarely do. There's no exclusivity usually. Not with
Mm-hmm.
publisher, but usually with platforms. What my experience is mostly with platforms, where they ask, they have a new app. That's usually
Yeah.
and then they say, can you put your content on our app? And then the profit sharing
Mm-hmm.
there is like, but whatever after the Apple or Amazon's cut, we'll do it usually 50-50.
Yeah.
Um, so for example, for people who are going to try, let's say to traditional publishing before we do self-publishing, what should they expect in terms of not in peso values, maybe in percentage values, like what kind of royalty should they expect? What should they be aware of if they try to enter the contracts or agreements?
Um, I,
What's
I based on what I've seen, very few publishers give advances. So if you've looked online and you've looked at like advice advice articles, like what to look for in a contract, and it talks about advances, you probably won't get any of that here in the Philippines. Probably no advances. I've seen contracts where the royalties are 15%, and I've seen contracts where the royalties are 5%. So
oh, there's 5%.
that's usually, yeah, yeah. But uh, but it's really contract to contract. So it's gonna be different. My general rules for, because people ask me for advice, but they don't show me the contract because they
Yeah,
can't, or
yeah,
or
no,
or they won't
I don't-
they won't they won't show the contract. They just want like some sort of reassurance that this is going to be okay. But the basic advice that I have for contracts that I don't see is make sure you keep copyright. If it doesn't say, if it says the copyright goes to the publisher, have them change it. Make sure that you keep copyright. Don't, not even shared copyright. It should
yeah,
be exclusive author copyright. Another thing is there should be a termination clause. So the contract should say when it ends, and so if it doesn't, if you can't see an end date anywhere in the contract, you have to assume that it's going to be forever, so you have to insist that there be an end date. 5 years is a good end date. uh you'll By the way, anything I say here, an author will receive pushback from the publisher on,
of
so it's
course.
really negotiation and how willing you are to walk away. um, uh the royalties, I don't know. I've never really encountered publishers being willing to negotiate on the percentage of royalties. So if you see 5, 10, 15%, that's probably gonna be it. You have to look at details like no royalties on copies sold at discount.
Mhm.
So that's usually in the contract. So actually, anytime they put your book on sale, you don't earn anything.
Oh,
So
really? I didn't know that. That
that's common. So so when local books go on sale, I feel sad because it means the author isn't earning.
it's like I'm doing it wrong, but I still give royalties when I discount our books. Oh, anyway,
Good for you.
yeah,
Good for
support them. We
you.
have to support the
But yeah,
writers.
exactly, exactly. So there's stuff like that. You have to watch out for that. There's also uh if there's it, you they should put there in the contract the schedule of when they pay you and when you get your royalty report. um because often it's awkward, for that's the awkward song, that's the awkward
Right,
dance between author and publisher, like when will you pay me, when do I get
right.
paid. So it should be so it should be a schedule that's in the contract, so the author isn't put in an awkward situation of having to ask for their money. At least the author knows that maybe January, Feb, or March of
Mm.
every year, they have the right to send an email and ask for things. So that. Another thing is uh, Another thing is, I guess if you're an artist and you're particular about the art, it should have a clause there about how you can have a say on final approval on any kind of art related thing. Um, that of course will vary depending on how attached you are to the work and what kind of work it is. I for example, because I'm not particular about the art, I am very particular though about the edit. So
Mm.
I ask for final approval on any kind of editorial changes done, even just proofreading on my book. So I have to really look into that in a contract. And then uh, sometimes contracts, I'm aware that some publishers just buy the work outright, and and so it's an arrangement where there's no royalties. because it's an upfront one-time fee, and
Mhm.
then they own the story from then on. Don't do that.
No, don't do
try
that.
not try not to say yes to any kind of arrangement like that, because it it it's characters also. It's characters that the book might not be the book, or the comic, or the
Yeah.
particular thing be one off that you did, but you have the right to use the characters
Mhm,
in
right.
other. You have the right to, of course, it's yours, you made it, so don't just sell the entire thing, where suddenly now another entity owns the right to create new stories based on characters
Mhm.
that that you made. So just stuff like that. It's hard though, because I mean, I say this, but when people, depending on their where they're at in life as an artist, when they're offered any kind of fee, they want
Yeah.
to take it. So just, yeah, just remember that you always deserve more. And this, you never know, this could actually have been like the next big thing, and you gave it away.
Mm. Well, I want to double back a little bit on with the royalties. So with many publishers, do they do it of gross sales, net sales? I'm surprised. That's something I didn't know. I was actually surprised that
I'm
they, if
pretty
it's
sure
discounted,
it's
there's
net.
none. No, I
Yeah,
would have
I'm
thought.
pretty.
But it's I thought the point of its percentage that if it's discounted, it's a percentage of the lower price, diba?
Yeah, I think I know, not all contracts have it, but when I started seeing it,
There was some. Okay.
that,
Oh.
yeah, yeah, it actually happens. Um, some I know of some publishers where, because they've already purchased the rights to the story, uh, they pay per reprint.
Mm,
So it is in the author's interest for sales of the book to really for the book to really sell out, so that it triggers a reprint and then they get paid again. But I don't think that should be the case. I think every single book purchased,
yeah, I
something
know.
must go to. I don't believe in the whole like batch and then pay upon reprint. So yeah, in terms of, I'm pretty sure it's net. I've worked with, I think, a couple of publishers. I'm pretty sure that they compute royalties based on net.
Mm.
So it's interesting, because if it's net, then it's actually a
Yeah, because they can
lower royalty
calculate.
per
Oh,
unit.
we spent more on
Yeah,
this. That's why
it's
you're no.
tax on marketing and taxes and
Yeah.
whatever. So yeah, so there's if it's hard to go it's hard to really be on top of this if you're also the author. That's why in other industries and in other countries, they have agents to be this person
To
for
negotiate the
you.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, to negotiate and make sure that you're being paid out correctly, and making sure that the books are displayed where they're supposed to be displayed.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's yeah, that's just something that is. But if you're publishing digitally, that's totally different thing altogether. Yeah, at least a lot of that, even if you work with different retailers, a lot of that is, you get your data and you see it.
Mhm.
You get the dashboard of your data, and you see the sales, and you see computations of your royalties. So at least it's easier in a way.
So speaking of digital, so you're saying like for example, with of course with traditional print publishing, the fight there's always a shelf space. You get displayed properly. Of course, print runs. How big is your print run? Because that will also affect the price. And since it's based on a what do you call this? It's based on a percentage base. That's how much you're going to earn. All that. With digital, as you said, a lot of these things are not factors anymore. There's no such thing as there's no shelf space anymore. There's no distribution costs. Marketing can now be done. Actually, they expect you to do the marketing as the author
Yeah.
already. So that's why for a lot, and as I think we were saying before that, the reason why publishers feel that, oh, you're only entitled to 5%, 10% is because we're the publisher. We put up the money for all these things. That's why we deserve
All the
the
work. Uh-huh.
yeah, and all the work. But when you get to digital, the reason why I think more people go into self-publishing, there's there's hardly any costs anymore. There's no printing costs anymore. There's no what do you call it? The marketing costs can be done through guerrilla marketing and all that. So when you were doing digital, what's the shift then, for example, in terms of now you're handling marketing, you're handling in a way distribution, um, and choosing what platforms. What are the things that what advice can you give to an author who's going to try to do digital publishing?
It it's very easy because again, as what you said, there's no printing, there's no printing, there's no things like uh, um, shipping books to bookstores and then making sure that they're displayed in the proper shelves. Those are all recreated in a digital environment. But it doesn't mean that it's easier. It's just that it doesn't mean necessarily that it's easy to be a success. It is easy to put up your Word document and a JPEG of the cover image on Amazon, and then you get to experience though the you get to experience uh what that feels like, meaning if you did not do the work in terms of editing and getting a good cover done, the reviews that you will get, they will tell you they will tell you exactly what you did wrong. Um, they expect readers of this particular market will call you out if your book is not the kind of professional quality that they expect, because it's not free, it's paid. So they paid money, they expect a certain quality. They are only probably going to give you one chance. It is a very crowded marketplace right now. It When I started on Amazon, there was a lot of authors and books already. Now there's more. I mean, it's super crowded. You can't even find anything anymore unless you know what you're looking for. It's really difficult to get noticed. Amazon is actually it, Amazon will actually encourage you to buy ads in Amazon.
Mm.
So just so your book will be noticed by people when they make certain searches, because the, there really is so many there really are so many books out there. It's so it's not the publishing part is kind of easy, but discoverability, finding readers, that's difficult. And that's why people have different ways to try to do well in this when they go digital. I know of successes who are really just lucky. I they I and she's so one it's a range. So I have to do a lot of work, for example. I have to be present online. I have to really do reader outreach. The kinds of books that I write are not instant buys
Mm.
for a lot of people. I have to speak to speak in classes, I have to teach, I have to really build communities and make people aware of my books so that my books will sell. Some people just happen to write books that people want to buy. They happen to, it's not even trend. There are some books and some genres and types of books within that genre where there's a stream of readers already that are just one click, will one
Yeah.
click everything. So I've worked with as I go through publishing my publishing experiments, I also helped out other authors publish, and some people I work with. So there's one Pinay author in particular. We helped her put her book on Amazon, and then it was just a thing she did. She put it we helped her put it on Amazon, and then she didn't look at her stats. She it was just a thing she did. She put it up, told her readers on Wattpad that it was up, and then didn't look at her stats,
Mm.
didn't pay attention to the book until 3 months later she got her royalty notifications, and she had earned like a lot of money. A lot of money, like in like easily over 100,000 pesos.
Wow.
In yeah, and she didn't do anything. So for every she didn't do anything. She just announced it one time and then
Yeah.
went on with her life. And so there are going to be a range of examples of people just writing a book that finds its own audience by itself, and then there's going to be people like me who constantly have to be present because the kinds of books that we write are not typical or don't have a developed audience yet where people see what it is and immediately buy it. We have to do the work of building the audience and explaining to people what the books are, what the characters are, and why we deserve to be bought.
I think,
It's a
because
range. It's gonna be
yeah, yeah. What's happening now is that, especially with you said Amazon, is this huge marketplace. There are all kinds of genres, all kinds of, like when they say their top 10 lists, there's a list for almost any specific kind of genre, like
yeah,
like
yeah,
sci-fi
yeah,
dystopian cooking novel, something like
yeah.
that. But so
Exactly.
it's really playing into the whole, the long tail of
Yes.
with digital, that you can have, with platforms even like YouTube and all that. You can have almost any kind of niche. um, so the shift now, I think, is that, but the nice thing about digital, because there are a lot less overhead costs, a lot less um, variable costs like printing. You don't need as huge a readership to make something, or to make it sustainable. Um, I think a lot of, there's that term now. There's a minimum viable audience. It's a lot smaller. You don't need
Mm.
like local publishing. What's the, for them to consider publishing your book? What's a typical print run, or that they would expect, for them to
Um,
consider?
I think when I was well back then, I think I think my print run was 10,000, and then eventually with another publisher it became 2,000. So it really varies because at least in my genre, Wattpad has changed the
Yeah,
location of the bar. Like the
yeah,
bar used to be here, with Wattpad it's higher. They expect, but again, it for Wattpad, for example, I think a lot of people are saying the conversion rate, like because it's free, it's likely a free story with thousands or millions of readers. I think right now, if they're able to convert the 1% of that,
yeah.
it's already like a huge publishing or print audience for them, or even digital. So that's what my friends who are really successful as authors are doing. They're putting their work out for free for to a larger audience and then monetizing it to the super fans
Right.
who might be than 10%, but they really release a product with value, and then even if less than 10% buy it, yeah, that's the viable audience, and it's small, but it works for them. And also they're working for themselves. They're usually indie publishers. So
Yeah.
they don't have targets to meet or bosses to report to. They really are it is really something that they're doing for themselves, and then the fans are rewarding them with so it's that kind of relationship.
Um, because of that, I think, we were talking a while ago about, the, we have, especially for when you write for a very specific kind of genre, for example, like a romance in English, for young adults, or for, um, and if you're not lucky enough to catch on to a publishing trend, they saying that with publishing, the misconception is that everyone thinks, oh, this is going to be because of Harry Potter. Publishing is a big thing. Writing is a big thing now. And they don't realize that, no, that's a exception to the rule. But with digital, what they say, that there are concepts like the 1,000 true fans, that you just need to find 1,000 fans willing to pay $100 a year, and that's already enough to sustain a single artist. But like you're saying that, to get those 1,000 true fans, there's a conversion. That's if it's 1%, that means you need 100, at least 100,000 fans and all that. So it seems that the trend now, it's really about building an audience first, right? It's not we publish something and then look for people to read. It's really uh, you have to be a little generous first, release it for free, even if there's piracy and whatnot. Just get people to read it, know about you. Then some of that you can convert um, them to buying ebooks or print versions or merch and all that. Um, and I think key to that is always going to be building a community, finding people who like you said, who like the kinds of stories that you do. Is that sort of what led you to start the idea of Romance Class, which is your? Okay, can you tell us a little bit about Romance Class?
Romanceclass is a community of readers and authors of Filipino romance in English. So I have to be really specific about that because there is a lot of romance content produced by Filipinos, but we in particular in the community produce romance content in English, and we're Filipino authors. And it started in 2013. So I did a free class on Facebook. I created a Facebook group, offered a free class. I said, if I gave away my outline and taught people how to write a contemporary romance, would you join? Would people actually finish a book? And they did. So 100 people joined the free class. There were about, of course, most of them were lurkers. There were about 50 active participants, and then by the end of 6 months, we had about 16 finished manuscripts, if I'm not mistaken. And then by in the months that followed, 11 of those manuscripts were published on Amazon as indie books. So the group that formed to support the online class um, uh, stayed because now we had 11 new books to support because because we had helped sort of release these books into the world, and now we had to, of course, our responsibility was to support it, to read it, support the authors, and the authors who didn't finish or didn't or sort of wandered into the group after the first books were released, we became a support group for them as well because a lot of them wanted to be authors, wanted to try to write, and it grew from there. So that is again one of those things that came up because it's just something we needed at the time. We put it together because we needed it, but now it's been around for 7 years. We've released more than 100 books.
Wow.
We've helped about 80 plus authors. And it has to remain. The community has to remain because now, now I've sort of made it part of the community rules that if you're going to join, you have to read, and and we all have to be. So that's the first rule. We have to all be interested in this kind of book and read this kind of book so that we can help it grow and help and it I've actually gone around and given talks about how to establish communities like Romance Class, and that's the rule that the first rule that I give. This has to be you have to have a commitment to read each other, and that's really the thing. And then you'll tweak it. Not all of you will be writing romance or will be interested in writing what we write, but the base commitment here is that you read each other, and you read each other even as some of you become more successful than others. You have to. The more successful you are, I think, the more responsibility that you have to make sure that the others are also seen and also get the opportunities that were offered to you. So yeah, uh, that's how we help reach uh yeah 1,000 fans, but 1,000 fans for everybody, hopefully. And yeah, so that's what we're trying to do.
So aside from saying that I think that's really great that because like in many artistic communities, even like with us, for example, in comics community, there's always that there's that crab mentality that sort of gets into many creative endeavors now. They sort of get more competitive, and it's more about putting down each other's works, or I don't want to read that because it's not. Making people, I see a lot of artistic communities, whether it's in the film, theater, it's those that sort of pull together and support each other that really uh, are able to, sort of rise up and make themselves more visible. Um, but aside from that, when you're talking, for example, to your readership, what aside from the fact that it's in English, what about romance class books do you feel among your community? What makes it unique? What's your distinguishing feature that this is what the stories that we as a group make?
Mm. We actually did make some guidelines regarding that. So that's my
Mhm.
other advice if people are really going to be serious, starting like an author community. So first you have to agree to read each other. So if you're okay with that, then you move on to the next thing, which is you agree on a stand. Like, and this isn't this isn't how we started. We all just wanted to write something and support each other. But I think the longevity here and the trust that we establish with readers and and any credibility we have with readers is because at a certain point, maybe 3 years ago, we became serious about this. Uh, as a group, we had to agree on certain things and commit to certain things in the books that we write. So, first of all, because we're romance, again, this may vary per genre. We agreed as a group, and you have to agree when you join. Happy endings only.
Mhm.
We follow a genre convention of romance, which requires a happy ending.
Yeah.
So that's the first level of trust that we have with readers that any romance class book will have a happy ending. Um, the next thing is agency. So this is new and this is something very specific to our Filipino situation. We decided as a group, and I, as the founder of the group, I'm sort of like the teacher enforcing this. Um, you have to give your characters agency. So a lot of Philippine romance media relies on the female, usually female, main character being forced to do something or prevented from doing something or coerced into
Mhm.
something. That is against our guidelines. And so it's not just me. Readers are now aware of this and they appreciate the books because of it. It is in every book we the position here is that the main character who tends to be a Filipina has choices and has and when she says no, people respect it. and when she and when she and when she achieves something in her career or when she does something for herself, people don't prevent her from doing that. So it's very specific. It's a very specific position that editorially we kind of that's why we read each other and critique each other. That's one of the things we watch out for because it's easy. We're so used to Philippine romance stories where pinilit ng parents, pinilit ng uh, or sacrifice something for your family or so we acknowledge that those stories exist but we will not write them. We will
Mhm.
write we demand well, we actually can't demand anything. I mean, we're not your publisher. But uh we want authors to write stories where their characters can choose things and are free to choose things, and then we see what happens when a Filipino or Filipino woman is actually given the right to choose things and see the consequences of her choices. So that's a rule. Another guideline, especially when it comes to the romance part, is consent. So everything has to happen consensually. Everything. Not all of us are writing books that have a high heat level, meaning explicit sexual content.
Yeah.
Some of us are writing teen YA killing stuff, but it's still pervasive in Philippine romance media that uh, you see stories na even if it's not explicit, there is a lot of um, uh, dynamics where people are not consenting to to the situations. They're not consenting to be in this situation. So that's another thing that we had to learn to watch out for in our books, that any kind of situation, any, like, does she want to be at that party? Does she want to did she want that drink? Did she want
Yeah.
every single thing? The main character, who tends to be a Filipino woman, has to say yes. So, and as you can imagine, it's difficult for some writers to get out of that mindset, because the first thing that they do, the first thing that they write in a romance situation is like the guy asks her out and she says no, so he persists, and
Yeah. Yeah.
so and then he asks her
It's one of
again
the
and he
tropes,
asks
of
her again.
course. Yeah. Yeah.
It is a trope, but and it's a valid trope. It happens all the time. You see it not just in Philippine culture, but in other cultures. But at least in our community, we decided none of that. When he asks, she says yes the first time.
Right.
Every situation is something that she wants to be in. And same goes for men as well, because sometimes we do encounter situations where the men are coerced into something. So we have to remind authors also to not do that. So those are like, it's just three things, but but uh, it it actually is editorially, that's what defines a romance class book, and that's why uh, that's something you have to believe in also if you're going to join the group. Otherwise, you'll be, as an author, you'll be so confused about why why people are saying all these things about what you've written when it's exactly like so and
All
so
these other
rom
romance.
com,
Right.
or
Yeah.
or something that you read when you were a kid. But we will push back against that. So my advice to writer communities is to decide what you stand for,
When it
and
comes. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and really be and you really gain the confidence to enforce that in terms of like editorial feedback and critique when you actually read each other. So yeah.
When I'm just curious, like when it comes to, for example, the aspect of consent, for example, is the things like the trope na, oh, this person pretending to be someone else so that, like, for example, what's one of those Netflix shows, the Cher Burgess at, where
Oh
is that
yeah.
actually consent? Is that
uh,
consent? For example, does that fall under your, because they think it's someone else, so even though they're giving consent, but they don't, because they don't have full knowledge of, oh, that's really this other person. Does that fall under your guidelines, for example, or is that a
uh, yeah, we'll have, the thing is, diba, we, even though in the group we have this stand, we're surrounded by media that doesn't follow it, and we
right,
actually enjoy those as well. so
right?
so eventually we had to sort of develop a vocabulary where, okay, in the group when we critique each other, we point this out, but you know what, we might enjoy something that
Yeah.
isn't that on TV or on film, but at least like acknowledge that this is something that is present there or that happens there. There's a book, there's a romance class book that went through one of the classes. It's called Ghost of a Feeling by Celestine Trinidad. And for
Mhm.
a huge percentage of the book, the girl thinks she's talking to a ghost, and he's not a ghost.
Yeah, of course.
he's he's not a ghost. He is in makeup and has a fog machine and is pretending to be a ghost. And of course, so uh that's one kind of deception.
Yeah,
and and there are consequences, and what I like again is we sort of challenge the author to, if this
yeah,
is really what you want to do, there has to be consequences. And true enough, when you read the book, he does deceive her in that way, and then there are consequences when
yeah.
the deception is discovered. So yeah, so it's okay to, for me, again, because every book is different, every author is going to want to attack something in their own way. It's really about how you show the consequences of this particular thing. So you can sort of skate close to violating a guideline,
Mhm.
but actually show how
Right.
how we can see it in a different way, or how we can process the consequences of it, in a very entertaining and romantic way. But then, yeah,
I think because one big issue that comes up a lot now, especially in art, is especially very political times, is what how do you how do you keep your standards, your core beliefs, your values. Sometimes when you are trying to make a living doing a certain art, we've had issues where like for example, like in theater, na why did this like Arete, why did they invite the Marx to come in? But then there were big donors. So how do you
right,
balance those things, diba? And what with you guys, for example, what you're doing is that you have a particular advocacy, certain values that these are the kinds of stories we believe should be out there. But these are the kinds of stories, the genres, the tropes that sell, and it's
yeah,
I think it's nice that
we do
but
end up,
yeah, how do you
we do
navigate,
end
balance that thing?
we we actually we actually by choosing to do it this way, we of course give up a lot of opportunities we could have had, and that's a reality. But we're indie. Again, I have, if I underperform, it's all on me. I have no boss that I report to. But yes, that's true. When you uh when you do work with corporate, or when you do work with, I don't know, an entity that has all these interests, or political affiliations, you will see that. I see that. I'm glad I'm in a position to opt out, and but of course that has financial consequences for me, and that's why I work in I keep my job in other fields. But I think it's where, again, I don't, people will decide what's best for them. I like that I've chosen, like that, if I've chosen it this way, and I know that I'm giving up some things, uh, I try to make up for it by looking for opportunities with people uh, who actually are more aligned in our thinking. That's a bit more difficult to do because of the nature of systemic injustice, where certain people in power really are in power. But it's, I think, I don't know, it is more rewarding to do it this way. It is more rewarding to do it this way and not have to think about, because the way that we do our books now is we're very mindful of, I was asked before, because a lot of the work that we do in editorial now has a lot to do with learning, for example, removing ableist language from our
Mm,
book, or removing racist language that we've kind of gotten used to growing up here in the Philippines, and we sort of excuse as a cultural thing. So but our books are also read in other countries. So
mm,
we do get feedback, and we do get the consequence. We get, sort of, called out if we do something wrong in that arena. So we're trying to be better. So I was asked before if that's just us being too sensitive, and I think if we our position now is, if we are able to make it so our books are safe for people who are marginalized, for people who usually experience racism, if they can rely on our books as the place where they do not get that, then it's worth it. It's worth the extra work and learning new things. This is not how publishing does it here. Um, it's not how it's not the standard yet. So it is like extra work for for uh for making it safe for a community, that should be enjoying our books also. Um, but yeah, it's a position that you take, that might require giving up, like doing extra work, or giving up an easy an easy
yeah.
paycheck. But for me, it's more rewarding, and I feel that that's why we've been at this for 7 years, and I've been at this personally for 10 years, and I still feel proud about what I've done. It's so easy to be burnt out and just leave it all behind because of how things are, and just how we work creatively. But I actually like that we're doing something important, I feel.
I think it's great that because you have a very specific advocacy, very specific values in your story that you want to preserve, and rather than, okay, there's no market for it here because it's digital, and we can actually go expand. We'll just find a way to expand the market for people in other countries, basically, who are maybe more open to this. You I guess there's that sort of entrepreneurial idea that if there's no market here, I'll find a market, I'll create one. um, uh, and for me, I think maybe that's one good way. Maybe artists can figure out how to navigate. How do I balance my values with making the work sustainable? One thing I also noticed that you guys do is you also branch out, not just in terms of audience, but even in terms of the output itself. It's not just books, ebooks, but like you're branching out into audiobooks. You're trying to do a film and video. Could you give us a little behind the scenes about the thought process of how can we expand past the usual platforms and the usual outputs where our stories are found in?
Um, yes, so those are really exciting things that we're doing. And I only really got to focus on that because I decided to write less. So, so
That's the
yeah. So in
downside,
terms
no?
of, yeah, just so that's a something you had a guide question for me about how to balance.
Yeah.
There are limited, like not just hours in the day, but like almost like spaces in your head. So when you focus for me, at least when I focus on one thing or one new thing, it means giving up time for something else. I used to release, I think on my most like productive year, I released 4 new books. I wrote and released 4 new books. I don't do that anymore. It's now down to 1 book if I'm, but I don't even think of it as 1 book a year on a schedule. I'm like, if it's done, it's done.
Yeah.
um, so that gave me the free time to think about other things, meaning audiobooks. So I uh, I think I think audio should be bigger in the Philippines, because we're stuck waiting in places a lot, and we could be reading more. And I could never read in a moving vehicle, for example.
Right. Yeah, it's true.
So I gravitated toward podcasts and audiobooks whenever I'm in transit. And when you start getting used to audiobooks, you will realize that there's no Filipino content on there because we're not doing it. And so that's an entire market that we are not present in, even if people are looking for it, because they can only go by what's available and we are not available. It requires a lot more work, again, because you have to write the book and then you have to get somebody to read like a 40,000 word
Yeah.
book, and pay someone well for that, for
Yeah.
doing that well. uh, so it does require some investment. That is something we're trying to it's something we're trying to get into. I've sort of experimented with how to produce that, but then quarantine happened, and
Yeah.
and I feel that a lot of people are at home or actually have home recording systems and home studios, and maybe I don't need to be thinking about this problem. Maybe maybe people who already have the talent and the equipment can, for example, audition or sign up for these audio narrator pools, uh, so that they can be contracted to read. And it's not just me, because the problem with financing an audiobook is, personally, I can't afford it, or another indie Pinoy author can't afford it. But you know what? There are Filipinos abroad writing Filipino characters. They might need a Filipino narrator, and they don't mind paying for it. So it's really just suddenly familiarizing myself with the whole new publishing system and what we need to be
Right.
present in it. And same with film. So that's another thing that I decided to do. that's now on hold because of quarantine. But
I guess.
uh, we've been in talks to have the books adapted into film. If not here, then if not, so far not here in the Philippines yet. So far we've been working with a team in LA to help find the right projects for us, because again, we want to be able to see the kind of
Mhm.
audience that this book can get, because and I've been asked like why haven't romance class books been adapted locally, and I'm like, they don't need us. They don't need. There's so there's so many Filipino romances, and and we do this so well. You don't
Yeah.
need to option adapt a book to to have content. We're so good at it. But other markets looking to diversify their lineup, looking to diversify the kind of stories that they tell, might be more interested in what we're doing here. So that's one project that I've been doing also. Yeah.
How hard has it
And
been? Because
again, that
yeah, yeah, again, yeah,
yeah, so it's just so and it's reader outreach again, because a percentage of those, if anything were to be adapted into the next like Kilig Netflix movie, then a percentage of those might end up buying the book.
right. Because you're branching out into other things, what's it like having to network with basically other fields? Now you're getting to people into film production, audio production, performers. Again, because writers role used to just we write it, we talk to fellow writers. But here, now, by expanding, you're now forcing yourself to and your community to expand into interacting with other communities, collaborating with other communities. So what's that been like, and how do you sort of move out of our introverted writer shell and to get out into interacting with other communities out there?
It's difficult, but again, I have to say that this all happened. All these projects happened in a way that that was slow, and for me felt organic, because again, when I mentioned that if you work with if you work with a with certain corporate entities, you can have all of this at the ready, and if and they will do it for you. um I chose to work only with people who kind of who got it.
Hmm. Yeah.
I use the term as if it means something, but it's a feeling that uh it's very much or it's very much deciding to work with people who understand the value of this,
Yeah. Well, you have
rather
a very
than me
specific
going.
kind of story. Yeah.
Yes, who understand and also probably have read it and liked it. So because I've been invited to meetings where I pitch what we're about to a skeptical
Hmm.
panel, and and so much of publishing and corporate and the arts works that way. And I don't know how many artists really like going through that, and if they're happy with the results. Uh, so I have decided to only really work with people who based on meeting them, understand what we're trying to do, are sort of similar, have a similar point of view. And so far it's been great because all the work I feel is higher quality, because for example, the narrator, I had produced my own audiobook, and I had gotten and the audiobook narrator I got is the theater actress who had been reading our books in performances for years. So she understood my writing. She was willing to read for 55,000 words of a book, and And
Is this for
when
Iris after the incident?
yes, years after
Yeah.
the incident, and when I and during the recording, when I heard her, she required very little direction because she she understood. It's like
Mm.
again, it's like and then when I ask her what it is, she says she doesn't. She claims her name is Rachel Coates. She claims that it's not some special talent. It's just reading comprehension. But there's there is something there. I feel that that certain people who value your work or understand what you're doing, they just do it better, even without much direction. Similarly with the team in LA that we're working with, who are kind of pitching us to film projects there. Uh, they understand uh, they it's a lady named Anna, and she came to us because she had read the audiobook. she had she was like bored, I think on a plane ride,
Mm.
just just ended up on Audible, tried out the book, loved Rachel's voice, and then ended up reading the book and contacting me after. So it's like again, I didn't have to explain why these books matter to us and the stories being told in this way. Um, so when she goes out and looks and talks to people about it, I trust her because
Mm.
she gets it. Even the people who do social media, so it looks like Romance Class has, as a community, has social media accounts, and we have a team of people doing the graphics, people doing video, people doing and it's not me. It looks it's not. It seems like I'm a busy person uploading all these things on Instagram or Twitter, but I don't do any of that. It's people who are also authors, who are good at this, who love the book. And when you see the post, it's always like they get it. They know. I don't have to say anything. It is exactly the way it should look. And
And that's
that
that
it's
it's
so
so
reassuring.
reassuring. Do you have any do you have any advice for students, for my students, and for any aspiring writer who wants to, maybe whether they want to make it to their full-time profession, or if they just want to, like what you did, just make it a part of their creative life also, but at the same time it's something that's sort of an advocacy for them. What do you suggest? How do you suggest they start out? What should they look out for?
Hi. The thing that works for me really, and I'm sorry because some people are really just artists who want to create. My advice is to participate first as a reader or consumer or a fan of the thing. you if you're publishing on Amazon, buy books on Amazon. If you're going to put up a story on Wattpad, be on Wattpad and read stories on Wattpad. Participate as a fan before releasing your work as a creator, because you will learn so much about what people like and how people prefer um, to consume and experience the that particular type of art. And then when you know this, at least you learn, you eliminate like 3 levels of mistakes and and uh, and do that uh, and sort of get to a successful point faster. Be a participant first. Um, and that should not be difficult if you're if this is something you like to consume anyway. If this is something that if this is something that if you like to read, then what's the problem in reading a little bit more? If you like reading comics, what's the issue? You should This is something you should try to participate in. And then if you find that you cannot, like if you really cannot, if you really don't like reading ebooks, if you really cannot read comics using apps, or if it's not for you, then you might need to step back and think of whether this is the path for you, because um, it's hard to make decisions. It's hard to make decisions as a creator and as a publisher if you actually don't like. the
Yeah.
the the ecosystem that
Mm.
your art will be released in. Yeah, and I can imagine like filmmakers. If you don't like watching movies, like
Yeah.
if
How
you
are you
don't
going to exactly?
how are you going to how are you going to be successful? How will you know what people like? And also when your friends release something, how can you support them if they because that's how we grow and that's how we get more support and more fans or readers or viewers when we are interacting with like-minded artists whose work might like fans of their work, and that's what Amazon does well actually. Like people
Mm.
who bought this book also bought. That's part of your book's Amazon page. So you should be in touch with that. You should be the kind of person who is a participant and not just a creator.
For my last question, with the whole COVID-19, the whole pandemic thing, I mean, people are saying that, oh, when this ends, it'll all, when can we go back to the way things were when this quarantine ends? But I really have a feeling this is not. There's no going back to the way things were before. This is like a disruption. How do you think a post quarantine, post COVID-19 world is going to be like for authors or writers or for publishing, and
So I
how do people prepare themselves, how should we adapt to this new landscape that we're sort of facing?
I find that question sort of I've been thinking about that because we had an event. I mean, we're an online community that
Mm.
meets twice a year, and then we had to reschedule. We had to cancel our face-to-face event because that was
Yeah.
supposed to be in April. So we are already mostly online. We publish online. We talk online. Everyone's online, and the the few events where we actually see each other in person now has to be canceled. So it's a strange feeling, but at the same time, we know how to do online.
Yeah.
So it almost feels like okay, let's just adjust a little bit, but the thing that we do 90% of the time is then the thing that now do like 95% of the time. But I think but the thing with our community is we were actually shut out of bookstores for years already. We a lot of us like maybe 3 years down the line in the past, we were already not publishing in print, or we were already not in bookstores, and not in the usual conferences, not in the usual trade fairs, not in um, not in the big book fairs. We were already doing this in our online spaces because we couldn't afford to join retail spaces.
Yeah.
so so many of the successful Wattpad authors are online serial fiction authors, for example, who were just really selling exclusively online. They know
Mhm.
what it's like. They know what it's like to not be part of of a retail or fair environment and just do their art specifically for online. So I feel that we're gonna see that more. It's weird. It's weird because for me it feels like so we won't be in bookstores, but we actually weren't
Yeah.
for
Exactly.
for a long time. No more launches in bookstores. Yeah, we weren't actually being launched in bookstores for for a long time. So I don't know if the community that really supports that kind of environment will come together and provide a more inclusive environment. So now more people can participate in bookstores, in retail, in public events. Uh, I have a feeling that what people were doing online uh, is the thing that will continue. I have a feeling that the people who already know how to monetize online work, they're the ones who will really take off because they already know what to do. So
But
yeah,
do you think that like for me, our office also, we work remotely with our clients. So when this whole thing happened, we're like, nothing also much changed. Right? It's just the things we didn't like doing, like we didn't like meeting people and going out to meet clients. Like, oh, now there's no choice. You really have to meet with Zoom and Skype
yeah,
and all that. And,
yeah.
the feeling was that, what we've been saying all along is now you're going to be forced to do that. But do you think that you guys have been in digital for a long time, and you've been advocating for, yeah, that you should be digital is where many writers should be going, and there've been a lot of people in the industry who are kind of skeptical about it. And do you think that this now actually, rather than it being a threat of a change, it's more of a change where, oh yeah, I guess Mina, we're all right. So this is actually where everything's going to start, because now everyone's now used to doing contactless payments and online and all that online content, and but
Imagine
would
that.
it,
Yeah.
diba? But do you think it'll now be more? Are there going to be more opportunities, or is it going to be now more competitive? Because now the people who were sort of iffy about it are now all going to jump into that sphere, and so you have to adjust. And now everyone's going to be here now. So even the anvils and the tahanans and all are going to be full force na rin there. So are we going to? How do we? And we, yeah.
We experience I feel that we experienced that several times, like
Mm,
the idea that um there would be like an excitement over digital, and then everyone would come in, and um I'm not worried, because the thing that really was difficult for a lot of us in digital was that the largest players didn't support it. So what happened was, we had our audience, they knew how to buy books on Amazon, or pay for their Wattpad coins, or pay for their Radish coins.
mm,
Like they knew how to do it, but it takes a larger player to really join and bring in more of their audience
mm,
to really expand the and I have a feeling, because in my experience, really, even if romance class joins, for example, MIBF, I don't think anybody is threatened by our
mm,
presence there,
mm,
because what we're doing is we're just participating with our own thing, and not really taking share from anyone else. We What matters is, if there's a lot of people there, at least we're present and we're accessible. I hope that other publishers feel the same way, and not
mm.
that they feel that they're taking our readers from us. That's not. I don't think. I
Right.
don't think that's the case. I don't think it's a case of now this totally different genre is gonna take my reader. It's not.
Yeah.
That's not. That's not how we think of it at all. But if they come in, and then they educate their readers that this is how books are easily bought. This is how you can receive the book. This is or in audio, this is another way to
Mm.
experience reading, and probably get more people to read. That's totally fine. Please join. Please join us over here.
So I'm gonna do the typical talk show. So how can people get in touch with you if they have questions or find out more about your works, about romance class?
I am
A good,
online at Mina V. Esguerra on Twitter and Instagram, and Mina V. Esguerra on Facebook. I have a page that's not updated, but but I'm mostly on Twitter and Instagram. I have a website, minavsguerra.com. I talked about Romance Class, that has a website and a catalog of all of the books that we publish. So that's over 100 books by Filipino authors, that's available all the time on Amazon. It's romanceclassbooks.com. We have an event coming up. We have online events happening all the time, but we have a big one on April 25. Um, it's gonna be. We usually have book launches and performances and giveaways, and we sell books during our events. But now that it's online, we're doing it a little differently. We're broadcasting it on Twitch. We're We're
Like
having
which?
people record video of their performances. We're gonna see how this goes. But yeah, so it's called April Feels Day. There's a sign up form at bit.ly/April Feels Day 2020 if anyone wants to see how a book launch could be done online and and a book event. So again, yeah, so anyone interested, you can message me, uh, talk to me about it. But again, I like to say that this is my romance publishing is where I'm at. Your community might be totally different. They might act in a different way. What we do might not work for you. So it's really about doing readers, what your readers want to do, and what fits your style as a creator. So, but yeah, I mean, send the message. I might be able to help.
All right. Thanks so much, Mina.
Thank you.